What's up everybody, how's it going? It's Burke, aka Dansweight here, and welcome back to the Final Fantasy IX Attack Only, No Magic Stones challenge. We have made it to the end of Disc 2 in the previous episode, and so we still have a lot left to do. At the moment, it seems like there's about 5,000 or so of you that are following every single episode. Thank you guys so much for continuing to support the series and the content. Please remember to hit that like button if you are enjoying the video, and without much further ado, let's move on to Disc 3 in the Final Fantasy IX Attack Only challenge. Okay my friends, so to begin Disc 3 we find ourselves back in Alexandria once again. And this is another section of the game that has a lot of story going on, a lot of dialogue, not a huge amount of boss battles or things to do. So in general, I think I'm going to start to speed up these sections more and more, like bypass sections, because the game is quite long and I want to try to keep it to about a maximum of 8 episodes if I can. So even if there's sometimes sections where, let's say, there's a few treasure chests to pick up, that kind of thing, I might even bypass some of those if they're not particularly important, and you'll just have to assume that I picked things up along the way as I went along. And I might also do the same for some of the shop stuff and the synthesis, etc. Because we still have a lot of stuff to cover, and we've already made it to episode 5. So what I'm going to do for that one is basically move things along from Alexandria. There's no boss battles here or anything like that. We're just going to be collecting stuff and moving things along as quickly as we can. The main thing here, I think that's worth noting, is that we can get a new weapon called the Angel Bless for Zidane, and that's something that you can synthesize in the shop. As we've established up until this point, the attack stat of the weapon seems to be more important for doing good damage than the actual strength stat that we have. And so of course, any chance we get to upgrade our strength is something that we're going to do. So we've got a few things here that's going to give us a little bit more damage. So the pattern remains the same, obviously upgrade the attack, but also anything I find that has elemental protection, I'm going to do my best to try to get. Now I think one thing that's worth talking about in advance is basically a mistake I made when it comes to how certain items work. Now, for me, one of the things I generally didn't know about and struggled with a little bit is knowing which things kind of work inherently and which things need to be used via magic stones. And for this, basically, let's just say you have an accessory that absorbs the lightning element. With that, you don't need to do anything. You equip the accessory and it absorbs the lightning element. But for certain things, even though, let's say, it's a reflect ring, it's literally called a reflect ring, equipping it doesn't give you reflect. The reason it's called a reflect ring is because when you equip it, you can learn how to use reflect. And so for me, I had like my kind of old, like classic Final Fantasy X head on, where I'm like, okay, if I equip a reflect ring, I should just get reflect by default. That's why it costs so much gil relative to the others, and that's why it's hard to make. That's a mistake. So anything you see with me like equipping reflect rings or trying to make more of them, in this particular version of the challenge, it was not the right thing to do, because I still, even when I equipped it, I was still getting hit by spells, and I was thinking, why is this happening? That's the reason why, because I'm not using the magic stones, and I'm just equipping the ring, which is not enough to give you the reflect. If I end up getting truly stuck, and I need to start using magic stones to complete the challenge, then at least I have the reflect rings then, so it's not like a total loss, but I spent more gil and time on it than I should have, and it took me a while before I realized that they don't work in that way. So when it comes to elemental stuff, you can get it inherently. Like let's say later on we're going to get a blade for Steiner that inherently has the fire element on it. That stuff works without doing anything, and also elemental absorptions, etc. But when it comes like buffs and statuses, it seems like it only teaches you how to use those abilities via magic stones. And so that's an important note to make if you're trying this yourself. In general, it's pretty intuitive, but I think for some items, so like the reflect ring for example, I thought that it could potentially work inherently, and so I tried to get a few of those along the way. One other thing worth noting is that I'm continuing to find Stellazios, and the Leo Stellazio can be found in Alexandria, so I definitely made sure I picked that one up. And from there, we are going to head back to Treno. There is one battle that we're going to have in Treno, and that is going to be against the Kotobla Pass. This one, we're going to equip obviously the newly found Angel Bless from the synthesis shop, but also we are going to make sure that we absorb lightning with the coral ring. So basically this is going to be the fight. It's very, very easy with this particular setup, and the good thing here is that you get 15,000 gil as a reward, which is quite a nice number. So that's generally the story of Treno. We beat this guy, We cashed in some more Stellasios, we got an Elixir, we got 10,000 gil, and we got a black belt, which gives us a little bit more strength for some of the characters that don't have a power belt. I did make a small return to Dary. There's a few things that we previously couldn't reach that we can now reach. The main thing here is that you get 30,000 gil from a particular part of Dary if you revisit it. And again, there are synthesis tricks that I've been seeing, and I will utilize those a little bit later. But for now, at least, I didn't want to try and do too much in terms of like gil farming tricks. And so literally just from Treno and Dary alone, I got like 50,000 gil, which is really nice. And so after that mini detour, I was back in Treno to just continue the story and make sure I could complete things as I went along. The only thing worth noting here is that you're forced to do a Tetramaster tournament in order to continue the story. And if you challenge the champion and you win, you get a rebirth ring as a prize. Now again, that's another one where I thought this is a really powerful item, and so perhaps by default it gives you like a re-raise. So when you die, you get revived just because you have the accessory equipped. Again, turns out that's not the case, but you can learn revive and auto life using magic stones if you have it equipped. So unfortunately, it's like the reflect ring. Just equipping it on its own doesn't do anything other than give you like those passive stat boosts from what I can see. But I still picked it up anyway because once again, it could be useful later on. Moving swiftly along, we are back in Alexandria already, and this time there is going to be the Attack on Alexandria section of the game. So things are hotting up here, and for this particular section we get to fight with Beatrix on our team, which is really cool. So we're going to have the Beatrix and Steiner section with the two of them together, which is really nice. So the only thing, once we have obviously Beatrix here, once she's done with her part of the story, I need to unequip her just in case some of my stuff goes missing, because she's obviously going to be a temporary party member. But for Steiner, obviously we're going to give him the best stuff that we have, including the trusty blood sword. I start to use the blood sword less as time goes on, because obviously, unfortunately, it has a pretty low attack stat. So when you're starting to face enemies that are truly powerful, you're not going to do a lot of damage to them. So it's unfortunate, but for now at least it's still a part of the game in which the blood sword is definitely useful. And we'd brought the cross helm earlier, which gives us a little more strength as well. And so once these preparations were set, I came into my first encounter and very quickly realized that I'd screwed up, because Steiner had a blood sword equipped, but we were facing undead enemies. So you're going to see how this battle ended up playing out as a result. Obviously, blood sword on undead enemies ends up doing damage to you instead of them. But Beatrix, let's see if she can hold on and just kind of win the fight for us here, even with nothing equipped. The answer is no. So this section is not supposed to be hard, but if you literally equip the worst weapon you can equip, you're going to die. Second time round, I learned my lesson, and I'd brought the coral sword previously just to obviously give me another strong attack option. This time I did give Beatrix a bit more equipment just to help her a little bit more. And let's see how the fight went when we were actually prepared for it. I'll show you guys these two fighting a little bit more in the background, but in general, those two had no problem getting through the encounters that we faced in Alexandria. And while we had the added bonus of, because these are still kind of normal random encounter style ones, we still continue to get experience points. That helps Steiner level up a little bit more as well, because he's quite a long way behind Zidane. And so what I will show now is something I won't spend too much time on, but it's a battle that I know a lot of people are going to be curious about. And that is against Tantarian. This one I tried to set up as nicely as I could and tried to get through the fight, but long story short, I basically couldn't. So if you don't have like the right kind of page open, basically, you're hardly doing any damage. So Zidane there did 32 damage, which is not great. The Paper Storm attack, let's see how much damage it does. The answer is a lot. And so basically you can't even get a start in the fight until you turn it to a page that you basically need to have to actually do some damage. So we're just going to watch one attempt here. I very quickly realized that this is just not going to work very well, and I didn't want to spend too much time on it here. So according to Jagged, if you get to around page 150 to 200, it will reveal like the actual boss you have to fight. So up until then, you're literally forced to attack and just wait and take all of this damage and punishment while before you even get a chance to basically start attacking the boss properly. So yeah, page 162, I've been found, and already Freya's on 1 HP, Amaran's very low, Let's just see how much damage we do to the actual enemy here. 1,000, that's pretty good. But Tantarian here has 21,997 HP. And you saw I did one attack, and that was it. Disappears again. And so we have to keep attacking it again until it pops up again. And you can see that this is really not going to work. I mean, we're forced to attack with the likes of Vivi, who do very little damage. But even if everybody was doing 1,000 damage, you would have to flip the pages to get to Tantarian 22 times, not die, and we have Doom as well. So basically it's very well equipped to not be beaten in attack only, especially with these levels. And so we'll have to kind of skip this one, unfortunately. It's an optional boss. We still have a lot to do in the story, and it seems so far away from being possible that I thought forget it. If we had something like the healing rod available, I thought maybe this is one fight where I could basically just use the healing rod to heal up like my party members and then maybe try from there. But Doom is just too much of a problem, and the fight will take so long, where if I could do, say, 3,000 to 5,000 damage per hit, then maybe I could get it done. But the way it is now, it just wasn't going to work. And so Tantarian, unfortunately, at the moment, is out of reach. So basically this section is going to end here, and from there we are going to move on to Lindblum to continue the story. Once again, here there is going to be a lot of traveling around the city, a lot of dialogue with the characters, a lot of active time events, all of that kind of stuff. We are going to generally skip through all of that business so that we can continue our journey forward. In terms of highlight things here, we have yet another Stellazia. We have the Sagittarius one that we should be picking up at this point. We can do this obviously while we're looking for the potions that we need to progress the storyline. Other than that, as always, whenever the story progresses, I have another look at the synthesis shop and I see if there's anything new that can be done. I think at this stage again, I was kind of really trying my best to pick up some more reflect rings. Again, that was ultimately a mistake for now. I shouldn't have spent that much time and effort to try and get any reflect rings, and just stuck with whatever the game gave me up until this point. But in general, Lindblum was mostly just exploration and just progressing the story without actually fighting anything. So things are going to get more interesting once we actually get to leave Lindblum on the Blue Narcissus and gain the ability to explore the seas. So I'm going to move ahead to that, and we'll continue from the overworld. So once we leave for the open world, we get the ability to obviously change our party members. I wanted to make sure Queena was in there because there's still, again, Q's Marsh. I wanted to continue to capture frogs, and so I put Queena into the team. And other than that, I put my other strongest attackers, which are Steiner and Amarant. And so my first port of call was to go and capture some more frogs. This is one of the ways in which Queena can get much better weapons with higher attack stats more quickly. And so obviously I want to do that as quickly as possible. And with the Blue Narcissus and the ability to ride Chocobos, etc., in general, like, the exploration is much quicker and easier. At this stage, I'd explored most of the world in terms of seeing the random encounters. So again, random encounters, especially if they're just really easy, I'm just going to skip through them. You don't need to see them at this stage. But there will be more challenging random encounters coming up later, which we're definitely going to watch. So while in the overworld, I made an early trip to Esto Gaza. This is a place that we're going to visit for the story later on. But according to Jagged, you can get here early and you can at least access the shop to potentially get some good items. So I wanted to have a look before progressing the story any further here. So let's see what they got. They have mithril weapons, and so some of these are going to be useful for the party. Like, for example, mithril claws and the mithril racket for Aiko and Garnet. And so anytime, as you've seen so far, the rackets have proven very useful because I can keep them on the back row and still do their full attack damage. And so other than that, obviously I did a little more shopping to increase some of my elemental protections as well moving forward. But that was basically it for Esto Gaza. There wasn't anything else available at the moment. Then after this, I spent a bunch of time trying to do more chocographs. And honestly, I didn't really get that far, and eventually I gave up. So the deal with chocographs is that a lot of them are accessible at this point. I think there's about 12 to 15 of them. I don't remember the exact list, but you can basically get to Mountain Chocobo at this stage if you hunt down enough of them. And so I thought to myself, because the rewards are very lucrative, it might be worth spending some time digging up more chocographs and trying to find them, etc. But I found that even with speed up, and I think I'd spent maybe like 20 minutes, half an hour or something on it. I was still struggling to find more chocographs. I just wasn't having very good luck. And I thought to myself, up until this stage, we've managed to get through. I wouldn't say it's been like easy, but it certainly hasn't been like, oh, it's been such a hard, challenging run. I thought if I get stuck and there's something in the chocographs that can really make a difference, then I'll come back and do more chocographs. But it was at this stage I basically decided to give up on chocographs for now. I think I found like the location of 2 more. So I think I did about 8 of them or something like that. And from there I thought to myself, let's just continue the story. These are going to be available for us for basically much of the rest of the game, and we'll come back to it if we need it. So at least for now, I put the chocographs on the back burner so we can kind of move forward and skip ahead from that. In terms of other things you can do before progressing the story, Jagged has the Treno auction house listed, and it says you can bid on the Promised Ring or Thief Gloves. I had a look at both of these and their abilities, and the Promised Ring does have a passive strength increase, but it's not better than something like the Power Belt, I think. And so I decided it's not really worth going for anyway. And in general, the Thief Gloves are kind of the same situation. They don't really add much to strength. In this particular run, I want to generally try to keep the Power Belt type stuff on as much as possible. And so it didn't really seem necessary right now to try and get anything from the auction house. And so in general, we are going to move the story on and head towards Black Mage Village. The village is basically deserted. There's a little bit of story going on here before they move you to the new location, so we're going to move swiftly past. But once you're done, you're going to start to head towards somewhere called Desert Palace. Now for this place, because it's a new area, I thought we might have some new difficult random encounters, so I'm going to show you this bit here. In terms of the Desert Palace, the way you know which one is the right kind of, I guess, quicksand sinkhole kind of thing to go into, it's the one that doesn't have like the steam kind of coming out of it. And so while I was waiting around for that, I encountered this guy. And I thought, is this like something that's going to be really OP, or can we kill it? So let's have a look. 672, 1,300, so that's 2,000 odd damage, and then Amaran with a nice miss there. But it came in with a Maelstrom, which made me think of Final Fantasy VIII, as I'd been playing it a lot. And you can see there, nasty move. Drops Zidane down to 1 HP and he's confused. So as my basically highest damage dealer, that is what happened. And so you can already see confusion is just a horrible, horrible status. And it seems like we're not going to have a way to protect against it in this playthrough, which is obviously a big concern here. So I was thinking maybe, you know, eventually you can get a ribbon or something like that and it would inherently protect. I'm not sure that's the case anymore. Seeing that like Reflect doesn't work and like the Rebirth Ring doesn't re-raise you, that kind of thing, I reckon, I'm going to look this up later, but I think if you have a ribbon, just having it equipped is not going to be enough, potentially. So we're going to have a look. But that was already a very dangerous encounter, and I still think at this stage it's going to be statuses that could be the biggest problem here. If there is a fight where you regularly get a negative status effect that can kill you being applied, either we have to rely on RNG to not be hit by it, or we have to hope that if we do get hit by it, we can still kind of somehow pull through. But that was a bit of a warning shot about what confusion can do to you and the problems you can face. But we managed to get through, and with that, we were into the Desert Palace. Now, for this place, you have to create 2 teams. One is going to be with Zidane, and the other is obviously going to be with whoever else you have left. I decided to try and create a roughly even split. I wanted to make Zidane's team stronger anyway, because I thought they'd probably give you the stronger stuff to fight for the team that Zidane is in. And so I decided to have Steiner and Quina with me, and then I wanted to take one of the mage characters as well. And so this, what you're seeing on screen now, felt like a relatively even mix, because Amaran is very powerful, and Freya's still one of the better physical attackers, and both Aiko and Garnet can attack from the back row. And so I thought that should be relatively even going. So that was a setup that I went for. And of course, as usual, I equipped everybody with the stuff that you've seen from most of the playthrough so far. Let's see the first random encounter of this little area. We have the Ogre. So 1092, 238, and it's still standing. Another 700, still standing. So from here onwards, basically, the random encounters go up a notch, and I took 600 damage there. Another hit, so it's well over 3,000 damage, and it was still alive. So from this point forwards, you're generally going to see the random encounters are going to take more hits to kill, and they're going to do more damage to me. And so there's going to be times when even random encounters are going to start to cause me a little bit of trouble here. Now, this was also the point of the game where I started to think, what's going to happen in terms of healing items? If I have a particularly long dungeon where I'm facing high-level enemies and I'm taking big damage every fight, am I going to have enough potions and high potions to heal through? Because obviously what I'm trying to avoid is using magic stones and that kind of thing. And so basically I can't use magic to heal outside of battle. So I only have potions and high potions to rely on. And so if I'm getting hit for like 1,000 damage per attack from the enemies, let's say, like a little bit later on, and I get hit roughly 2 or 3 times per fight, that's going to be like, I don't know, 15, 20 high potions to heal everybody depending on the fight every single time. And so this was the first time I was starting to think, okay, are we going to have a bit of a resource problem here? So I was trying to be even more aware of making sure I always had like 99 potions and 99 high potions while I was entering new areas. So that's definitely something that started to play on my mind a bit more, because ever since I saw that landworm / sandworm, I forgot what it was called, things were starting to look increasingly dangerous here. Like you can see how quickly you start to burn through things like potions when you're getting hit that hard. But that was basically it. That's like a short little section. I had the 2 random encounters, and from there you get onto the Hildegard and you continue on with the story towards the Forgotten Continent. Once I made it to the Forgotten Continent, same again, I had a little bit of freedom and I decided to make use of it by heading to the Q's Marsh nearby. And as a result of all the frogs I'd been catching, Quina was upgraded to a Bistro Fork, which is really powerful for this stage of the game. So those frogs have been paying dividends for us in the playthrough, which is nice. Now from here, we have to try to make our way towards Oeilvert. And this was the part of the game where the random encounters really started to go up a notch. So we're actually going to watch some of the path to get to Oeilvert here. So this thing looks like some kind of hell house to me. Definitely reminds me of it. Its name is weird. It's literally called Armstrong. I don't know what that's a reference to or why it's called Armstrong. To me, it's just like a Howl's Moving Castle / hell house looking thing, but yes. At this stage, I was also starting to wonder, like, basically the biggest strength boost that we get is from our accessory. So the power belt gives us a +3 to strength. And obviously when we're leveling up, we get the +3 extra kind of passive bonus that increases our strength even more long term. But as we're getting hit harder and harder, and healing might become a problem, or even surviving these fights, I thought to myself, what about potentially giving up on these and starting to equip characters with more and more stuff like coral rings, and anything that can absorb elementals, just to make sure that I don't get killed, and that I don't have as big of a healing burden. And so that's something that I started to think about, but I was trying my best to basically get everybody through these fights and to level up with the high strength boost equipment, just so that I could obviously benefit as much as I can. And so at this point I also encountered a big old Adamantoise. Let's see how this one went. I was very worried because I thought, shit, my attacks are going to do nothing here. Let's have a look. Thankfully, I still did over 1,000 damage, so it doesn't seem to have like a super hard shell. If it did, we were going to have problems. But this is another example of, like, for example, for this region, maybe it would have been better to drop the power belts and have something that absorbs the earth element instead. But I looked at the damage, it was like 300, and I still killed it easily enough that I thought it's just, I would rather keep all of my strength stuff and just keep moving, because the levels were coming in relatively fast here, because I think I'm still far from being over leveled for this particular part of the game. But generally I had to keep paying attention to my HP and making sure that I didn't put myself in any danger. I started to buy more tents, I think at this time, like especially out in the open world, and anytime you find a Moogle in like the more storyline, like linear contained areas, it was definitely looking increasingly important to have tents to heal more efficiently than, say, potions and high potions. Now, you remember, Cactar gave me a game over last time. Let's see what happens here. We have 3 of them and 1,000 needles. So fortunately, I'd leveled up, I'd healed back over 1,000 for at least 3 of my characters, but they also come in with Confuse. So this is just a horrible, horrible combination. 3 Cactars at once, 1,000 needles, and Confusion at the same time. So I thought this is a game over, but I thought I'd just continue anyway. Thankfully, I'm hitting much harder now than when I first met them. So that gave me a chance to actually take them out. It seems like once they make an appearance, they stop doing the 1,000 needle counter. And so this is something I started to realize here, so I kind of stopped attacking a little bit. Steiner had already basically been programmed to attack because he's on Confuse. Thankfully his confusion hit the Cactar, so that was actually pretty useful. 792, and then the 1,000 needles comes back and we get taken out. But Zidane's still waiting here. So I'm just going to wait and see like when it appears, but of course it did another Confuse instead. It's great. So you got 2 confused characters. That was very lucky. And so was that. So the first time Quina did 100 and something damage and then did 1,600. So that was a very lucky random encounter there. I made it through by the skin of my teeth. But you get a 10, you get a Phoenix down, you get tons of experience. So in general you can see the random encounters are getting very dangerous here. And the healing burden is growing ever higher. So definitely need to invest in more tents here. And just have to make sure I keep my stuff stocked up moving forward. But eventually we did make it to Oeilvert, and we can continue the story from here. Now from the get-go you have a mock shop which does have some really good stuff. There's too many things to kind of go through individually here, but some of the standouts were things like the green beret, which give you a really nice general boost in strength and defense, and we had the judo uniform, which was a bit of an upgrade for some of the equipment that we had previously as well. So I definitely did some shopping. My funds were still pretty healthy at this point, and from there we could generally continue on with the story. So once we're inside, we're going to have a look at some of the random encounters again, because they weren't all like completely just breezy. The first ones we met were ogres, but we had a preemptive strike, so that was definitely very helpful for us. Now this was an interesting enemy, Epitaph. Let's have a look at this fight. I thought I'm going to do no damage here, but again Quina did big damage, and once you attack it, it uses the mirror ability and brings out one of your characters. This time I was fortunate and Freya came out. If you don't know why that was fortunate, you'll find out why later. But I decided to focus my attacks on Freya. 2 attacks were enough to take her out. And then back to Epitaph. And it seems like whichever character it chooses to bring out, it will keep respawning that character once you kill it, and then you attack Epitaph again. So took Freya out a second time, and we're continuing to hit Epitaph. But at this stage I was thinking, can I just attack Epitaph instead of Freya? Just like ignore Freya here. And there you go. So we took out Epitaph. Freya does 360 damage, which honestly is not that bad. Now look at the experience points gained here. This might be a way to farm for experience. I'm not sure. 7,400. So I think if you deliberately keep respawning Freya, and you're able to kind of basically make the battle last longer, you probably get lots of experience points. But yeah, so that encounter was definitely interesting, but we still managed to make it through okay. But I will show you guys another variant here in which Quina appears. So I thought to myself, that's fine, like maybe it's going to do a bit more damage, maybe a bit less, it's RNG, and then this happened. Because we literally have Quina in our party, if it mirrors a character that's already there, it's an instant death attack. And so Quina cannot benefit from this fight and get any extra experience points, which was a shame. Because you saw that like you get a lot of experience for killing this guy, and the mirrors that it summons. So 552 damage is quite a lot, but because there's a Moogle nearby here, you're able to heal up using tents and stuff a little bit more easily. So it wasn't too big a deal, but it was a little bit unfortunate that Quina couldn't benefit here from the nice experience points. So in terms of the random encounters, that was mostly what we had to deal with, so I'm not going to show any more from that one. There are a few cool things that we picked up during our time here. So one of them is Gaia Gear, which allows you to absorb Earth Element. And that's nice because the more things we have that absorb, which are basically armor pieces instead of accessories, obviously we can leave our accessory slot free to do more stuff. To give ourselves maybe a second elemental protection, or to continue to keep our power belt, and that kind of thing. And so that's why equipment like the Gaia Gear can definitely be very useful for certain fights. Now, other than that, we have a shield armor, which gives us more elemental protection. It's 50% on fire, ice, and lightning, I believe. And so that one's obviously a good one to have for Steiner as well. And the final thing, which is a very nice find, is the Power Vest. And this one is perfect for Zidane because it gives you a +2 on strength while having a really nice defense stat. So for him, like, I think that's pretty much the perfect kind of non-elemental strength and power-based armor that he can have. So that was a really nice find. And so from there, I think it was basically preparing myself for the next major boss battle. And this one was definitely a fun one. So let's move on and fight against Ark. I had a little bit of time to prepare here. I'm running you through, like in the background, my preparations. What you're going to see here is that some reflect rings are used. They end up being useless in this fight. I've read from the Jagged guide that it talks about Ark having a lot of wind-based attacks, and I thought maybe there's a small chance it casts something like Era or whatever it might be, and so I thought having a reflect ring might work. Now, two things wrong with that. One, it doesn't end up casting anything like that. Jagged gives like a short overview of what the boss can do. It doesn't give you like a full breakdown of all of its moves and all that kind of stuff. So no Era, no anything like that. And as I mentioned, the reflect ring doesn't have like an inherent default reflect ability on it. So the reflect ring was definitely useless. Another problem I had in this fight is that barely anyone in the team has anything that protects against wind. This was one fight where I got caught out. There are some items which can help you reduce wind damage, but I didn't have these particular items. So Jagged says, for example, you can use things like Lamia's Tiara. No one in my party right now can equip that. Gauntlets, which I don't have. I don't remember where I was supposed to get those from. But also it says you can use the shield armor. This is not really correct because the shield armor doesn't protect against wind-based attacks. And so basically I was scrolling through all of my stuff, and as you'll see in the background as well, I had nothing that could like even 50% reduce wind damage. I think maybe there was one item among everybody that could reduce wind damage by a little bit, but I had to go into the fight facing the full power of Ark and its wind-based attacks. The final thing to note, you're going to see Zidane equipping a rebirth ring. This was the fight that really taught me that these things just do not work inherently, and they're mostly there to help you learn those abilities with magic stones. So just bear that in mind. This was definitely not the right setup because I assume that there's a chance these things work just by having them equipped. Okay, here we go. Attempt 1 against Ark. Ark has 20,002 HP. Let's see how we got on. I really like this battle arena and the look of this fight. I don't know, it just looks really cool. It almost looks like it's not Final Fantasy IX. This feels more like a Final Fantasy VIII fight or something. Super cool. So damage-wise, I think we're doing okay. Missing is obviously really crap. It has a move called Photon, which reduces your HP to 1, which, of course, fantastic. I mean, love it. I guess if you're playing a normal run, minus strike, if you have it with someone like Steiner, probably does a good job here. But obviously none of that stuff is available to us because we're not using the magic stones. So I wasn't too worried about the damage. It was more so moves like this, which come in and of course they hit everybody. So anywhere from 260 to 500 damage there. And because it used Photon beforehand, obviously BB is dead. But this is a pretty good start. I thought, okay, I'm not too worried at the moment. Photon comes in again, and it's on Queener, so far, so good. Steiner and Zidane are still our best bets of winning this fight. And so already RNG-wise, this was about as good as I could have hoped for this fight, I think. No sign of any wind-based attacks. Still Photon here. It hit Queener again. I had a brilliant RNG run here. Obviously, if it hits someone who already has it, it does no damage. So I was thinking, okay, I might be able to just ace this, just first time, get through. But then Steiner missed there, which was a bit sad. So that's 2 attacks already that missed. And then Propeller Wind comes in, and Propeller Wind is the big problem here. Watch what happens. Everyone is confused. So yeah, now you see the show. This is where RNG really fully kicks in. Zidane hit himself for 1,000 damage, and Queener fortunately still hit Ark, which was nice, but then Boomerang comes in a second time. The advantage here is that obviously anyone who's confused gets knocked out of it. So depending on sequence of events here, If it does Propeller Wind and then Boomerang back to back, it might not be so bad. So we were still in the fight here. Photon comes in again. Hits Zidane. Not the end of the world, because at this stage both of them do a lot of damage. Steiner maybe even a little bit more so. So I thought this is close. Like I have a chance here. We've done quite a lot of 1000 damage level attacks here. Okay, so this is the wind-based attack that I was afraid of, and it comes in on everyone once again, and Zidane has been taken out. Now the damage from that isn't horrible, but obviously when you combine it with Photon, everything can be deadly. So let's have another look. It also gives you the float status, which I don't think affects too many things, but basically Steiner was our only hope, and he was confused with relatively low HP. And he hit himself for a nice 2000 damage then. Because I think because he was floating, he took more damage. But there you go. I had a good run at it, but I couldn't make it through on my first attempt against Ark. Ultimately, I realized one of the only chances I have to try to make the fight a little bit more likely to go in my favor was to change a couple of things to try and increase my evasiveness. And so that was one thing I had to look at, because the evasion numbers are not too bad. Like, you can literally get to about 20 or slightly above it, depending on what you equip. And I thought if I give myself, I mean, I didn't know if how equally it translated, like is 22 a 22% chance of evasion or not, but I thought at the end of the day it's a downside better than what I had before. So basically the only play I really had was to move my accessories back to just being as strong as possible, and in terms of defensively, try to increase my evasion instead of wind protection, which I didn't have, or confusion protection, which wasn't possible anyway. And so let's see what happened next. The answer is the next attempt didn't go too well. We're going to skip straight through. We had some pretty bad RNG and we got wiped out pretty quickly, so we're going to move swiftly on from that one. Now we're going to have attempt number 3. Now for this one, I made one adjustment where I wanted to try the Blood Sword against it. I thought maybe there's still a chance that we regain enough HP to try and keep Steiner in the fight for longer. And even though he takes a big damage hit, maybe the extent to which he can survive will kind of overpower that. So let's have a look. I realize like with 215 that's not the best, but hey, over the course of 10 attacks that's 2000 HP that he regains back, and maybe ultimately that serves us better? I don't know. So the first photon came into Vivi, which was a good start, but things are going to get pretty wild here. Queener with 1400 was nice RNG, but Steiner barely regaining anything here. Now, Propeller Wind coming in this fast, I thought, okay, this attempt's already over here. Thankfully, it missed Zidane, so I think some of that is obviously the change of equipment here, increasing my chances of evasion. Queen has still landed a hit at 400, which is definitely nice. Boomerang comes in, so this is a relatively similar start to my first attempt, where Vivi was the first to get wiped out. 925, and another big attack from Queener there. So this time Queen is doing a really nice job for us, and kind of making up for the fact that Steiner's not doing as much damage. Whirlwind comes in, and we're all floated up, so 450 or so damage, like anywhere from 350 to 450. And this is where again Steiner's Blood Sword will help a little bit, but he missed, which was lovely. So same pattern as attempt 1, Queener drops to 1 HP. Another reason I had the Blood Sword was basically hoping that if we get hit by a photon, Steiner might be able to recover enough HP to survive the next attack. But he just keeps missing at the moment, which is really frustrating. But same combo again, photon and boomerang. And my second party member is gone. Zidane lands a critical, which would prove to be important later. So a double damage critical there. Done about 900 more damage, 800, 900 more than usual. So Whirlwind didn't do too much damage there. I think that was one of our saving graces. If Whirlwind was doing more like 500-600 damage, I don't think this would have worked either. Propeller Wind again, and at this stage I still had a lot of damage left to do. Like, I thought, okay, now we're going to get confused, we're screwed. But it missed both of them, which was pretty lucky, I have to say. And so we can continue to put the pressure on, and Steiner's continued to gain HP back here. So this was starting to work a little better here, and I thought maybe there's a small chance I can make it. So 255 on the boomerang, and Steiner's basically regaining that if he can make a hit anyway. And he was getting very close to trance, which I thought could also be my saving grace. Because my general plan was, if this continued to fail, was to basically farm for trance, come in close to trance for everybody, and use the extra trance damage to try and kill Ark more quickly. So Zidane is really on his last legs here. But Steiner's still looking healthy. He's not doing much damage, but he has been very tanky in the fight. So this is going to kill Zidane, obviously. And I still had a bit of a long way to go. But he had trance, so I was curious, like, how much more damage is Steiner going to do now that he's in trance? Like, is it going to be like 700-800 damage now? Or is it going to be barely any more? Let's find out. Yeah, it is still about 50% more. So I think trance, the boost is about 50%. Propeller wind came in, and this was sad because I thought, come on man, I'm just about to be on a good streak here. And propeller wind ruined my trance. But I got lucky, and Steiner still went for Ark, doing another 300 damage here. So he's really trying his best to chip through here. Since he's already confused, this attack did nothing, which was nice. Second trance attack again managed to hit Ark, and then the trance wore off. So I'll take that. I think that was still a pretty good result there, given that he was confused. I don't know if when you're in trance, like the game kind of ignores the fact that you're confused. It still hits the enemy regardless. I didn't have enough turns to check really. But that miss there was really annoying. Like, I knew I was starting to get really close. I'm really limping over the line. And I thought, literally, Photon can come at any time and basically wipe me out. So it was a race to see if I could finish this guy off before I got hit by Photon plus something else. Let's see what happens. So just really limping over the line. At this point, I kind of regretted, I think, not having his normal sword. I think I would have done enough damage if I just had the normal sword at this point. Because I don't think he's been hit for enough damage to take him out at this stage. I mean, we lost out at least a good 4,000 or 5,000 damage, I think, minimum, as a result of having this weapon. So I don't think this was the right call, but hey, I'm almost there. But Photon comes in, I literally have 1 HP left here. I am hanging by a thread. And I wasn't keeping track of the damage, so I didn't know how many more attacks I needed to finish it off. The answer was 1. So Steiner, the only one left with 1 HP, only doing 200 damage a hit, managed to finish it off, and I got through Ark. So this was a really kind of, I would say this was a lucky win here, but I managed to get through without having to do anything more. So tough fight, but I think if I had the right thing equipped for Steiner, I think I could have ended it even a little bit more sooner. So yeah, dangerous, but definitely RNG is still favorable enough to not need to do anything crazy to be able to pull through here. So yeah, a major boss defeated, thankfully. And so with this, we switch over to the other team, and it was time to obviously get things set back up for them. I think one of the main things at this stage was that we had things like the mithril rackets for Aiko and Garnet, and I was really curious to see how much damage they were going to do from the back row. But before we could do any of that, we had to play a little bit of this mini game with Reach and Sid. It took me a few goes for sure. It's always a little bit annoying, but it's a fun section of the game in general, I have to say. But for the sake of this playthrough, obviously, we're generally going to be skipping things through. So there's a lot of things that you need to do here. There's a lot of like things you need to light and paths you need to take to make sure you pick everything up. I think of these, again, probably the most useful one is another shield armor. And so since we have 2 people that can equip this type anyway, having 2 of any useful armor of that type is obviously going to be a good thing. So Aiko generally was trying to make her way through, but let's have a look at a random encounter to see how it goes. So the first enemy we met was Draken, don't know how you pronounce it, obviously. Amaran comes in with a big attack, but Aiko is doing 800 from the back row with her racket. I mean, that's nice. It's only 300 less damage than Amaran is doing. And given how kind of less built for, you know, power Aiko is compared to him, I thought that was a really good performance. So that's pretty nice. We obviously have the weird issue at this stage of the story where Garnet sometimes just can't concentrate and can't execute a command. So even the usual kind of attack command, it won't work sometimes. We'll see if that plays a role in whether or not we kind of pass or fail against the boss. But in general, it's just a relatively minor inconvenience against like random encounters. So this guy has his vanish move, which obviously makes it pointless to try and attack him. So I just had to sit tight and wait for him to return before continuing the assault. And once that happened, Garnet came in. This time she did execute the command and did a critical 1,840 damage. So she came back with a vengeance. And that was already a nice sign, because one thing we do have to be careful of is if there are times in the story where you really are forced to lean on the likes of Aiko, Garnet and Vivi, we need them to still be able to do enough to actually pull us through in an attack-only challenge. And so I've still been doing my best to make sure I give them the right accessories to boost their strength on a level up, and obviously to try and find the equipment that will give them the best attack damage possible as well. And so far at least it's been doing well, because they're still doing pretty significant damage, even though they are much better suited to magic. I think pretty smartly, because there was a lot of traversal to do and a lot of candles to light and rooms to find and that kind of thing, they didn't make it too painful from the random encounter standpoint. In terms of any other things you can find, we have things like the Enkai armlet, which has a good evasion. Again, if I find that I'm struggling on a fight where I'm not able to have a specific protection against something, to at least try to push the RNG in my favor to evade attacks that could have given me a status or a one-hit KO or just big damage, I thought that's like a good backup plan. So anything that gives you a lot of evasion generally could be quite useful. Other than that, there is an accessory that you can pick up called a black hood. We can buy these later, but for now at least, we pick one up, and it's another nice one because much like the shield armor, it has multiple elemental defenses. It can reduce damage from fire, thunder, and water by half while having a pretty good magic defense stat. So definitely picked up the black hood as I was moving along as well. The general theme of this place is that you have these bloodstones, and if you activate them, you basically get a nice piece of equipment as a result. And they try to make an effort to give you things that can genuinely. But what I will do is move on to the next boss battle, because this was the one where again I made the mistake of trying to equip reflect rings and have it not be very useful at all. So we are going to be fighting Valia Pira as our next boss, and this one is basically a pure magic caster. And so I thought, this is great. Basically against Arc, I equipped reflect rings, but it never did what I thought was just a normal magic spell that could bounce off a reflect. And so for this fight, I still equipped it, hoping that at least for some of the characters, the magic that it uses bounces back, and we make the fight even easier for ourselves. First of all, it's going to kind of scan through which of the bloodstone stuff you found. Obviously, the more of the active bloodstones there are, the harder this fight is going to be for you. Now, Freya, to be honest, because she's been out of the story a lot and she hasn't been able to feature in the party as much, her level is notably lower than the rest, and that's going to start to become a little bit of a problem later, because she's literally not really doing that much damage. Even though she's suited to physical attack, she's still, I think, quite notably weaker than the likes of, say, Zidane, Amarant, and Steiner. So, that was guarded. We managed to get rid of that one. Basically, we had the Dark Hood equipped, which I mentioned reduces ice damage to 0. And so this one has 22,119 HP. These guys are generally not that well equipped to do a lot of physical damage compared to the other team. So the fight's going to take a little bit of a while here. But the first attack that Garnet took, she didn't have a Reflect Ring equipped. And so that's why the attack worked normally. Then Valia Pira cast Reflect on itself. So I thought, basically, at the moment, Amaran has a Reflect Ring. But I thought, because it casts Reflect on itself, usually if a boss is doing that, it bounces spells off itself. And I just didn't really remember what the animation would look like if it bounced it off itself versus it just did it directly at Amaran. So obviously I saw him get hit by the fire spell and I thought, oh yeah, like it bounced the Reflect. It bounced it off itself. That's why we're getting hit by these. And so once again, due to circumstances, I couldn't tell that the Reflect Ring wasn't doing anything. So it's kind of funny, like I equipped it for 2 boss battles in a row, and for both of the boss battles, I didn't, like, things didn't happen in a way that allowed me to realize that the reflector ring wasn't casting any kind of reflect. So it's pretty funny. So this was another fight in which it didn't work. And so I needed to encounter like one more fight before I truly realized that the reflector ring wasn't working for me. But yeah, in general, this fight took quite a while, so we're going to speed through it a little bit more. But this is all it does, basically. It does reflect, and then it does a bunch of elemental spells. So it's quite simply, as always, a race against time to see if I could chip through the damage enough to kill it before it was able to take my party out. I think thanks to the combination of still having elemental protection, like I didn't have enough reflect rings for everybody, and so I still made an effort to have elemental protections there. Like you can see for Freya, for example, she would have been dead by now, but because she had the shield armor, it still worked pretty well. And so thankfully we took it out. It says here the battle ends when its HP or its MP reaches 0. It felt to me like I didn't do 22,000 damage, so I'm generally assuming it was the MP that ran out, and we just survived long enough for it to unload all of its magic spells, and then from there we could continue on. But whichever case it was, we managed to beat Valia Pira first time, and we kind of didn't end up understanding how the reflector ring worked in this fight, but it's coming soon. So, unfortunately, Aiko will be leaving the party for a while here, and so we made sure to unequip anything from her, so that we had it available for everybody else. And then from here, we can continue the story once again and flip back to Zidane. And so with that, we were back on the Blue Narcissus and had a little bit of freedom to explore around once again. But I decided to try and just continue the story again, and this time you have, again, really nice stuff available in the Esto Gaza shop, one of which, the most important one to note, was the Octagon Rod. I didn't read what it did. I was just like, I saw that it has a higher attack stat, and I was like, yeah, obviously I'm going to equip that. Like, that's a no-brainer. And so I just brought it for Vivi, and then I equipped it, but I didn't check what its abilities actually were, and it will be quite important later on. Like, that weapon ended up really changing the course of a later battle that I had. So lots of good stuff here, and so we were just about kind of staying afloat in terms of gil, because I wanted to leave enough to make sure I keep replenishing my stock of high potions and potions, because as you've seen, like, we're taking more and more damage, and if they run out, then we'll be in trouble. And so with that, it was time to continue things, but I ran into an encounter against these two birds, the Garudas. They're very tiny versions of Garudas, but here I thought I'd get to see what the next level of random encounter is. So we've done a lot of damage to them, but they're still standing, and immediately coming in with a Firaga. And this is what I mean by, like, is it eventually wiser to just have elemental protections instead of going for the raw strength? Because it feels like everything's hitting with some kind of element, and hitting pretty hard as well. So if even a random encounter is doing this much damage to me, just like over the course of like an entire dungeon area, I just don't know if I'm in too much danger of using up all of my resources. So Amaran literally just got KO'd straight up from a random encounter. So it's not that we can't win, but it's more of a, like, can we consistently keep winning? That was the important question here. But in any case, we continue on to Mount Gulug, and we'll see how the random encounters in there were going to treat us. First off, awesome track here. It's one I had completely forgotten from the soundtrack, but I heard it here and I was like, damn, this is really good. And so here we go, our first random encounter in here, and these guys already look pretty menacing. This is definitely one of the areas where I started to see the general level go up here. Like, enemies are just naturally casting Firaga, and again, Amaran is on the receiving end here. He has no specific fire protection at the moment. I'm still continuing to go for like a strength-based run. Now, you saw Steiner also did low damage there. He has the Fire Blade, which has a really nice attack stat, but it is imbued with fire element, and so anything that has any resistance to fire, he's obviously doing less damage. And so that's something that's going to become even more apparent later on, but for now at least, it's still doing damage, but at a reduced rate. But you can see, I mean, I'm attacking things quite frequently, and it's taking quite a few hits to die. Cannon's taking half of my HP, it seems, half of my current HP. So again, we're not like dying to these, but they're becoming increasingly difficult to deal with. and doing an increasing amount of damage before we actually kill them, which was potentially the bigger problem. But nice AP, and so our levels are at least continuing to catch up with the game. So thankfully they put a save here, which was kind of necessary because of what happened pretty soon afterwards. At this point I was starting to fear the elemental damage a little bit more, so I had the green beret, which gives me nice strength boosts, but I thought maybe it's better to go for something that was a little bit more protective. And so I'd brought some black hoods, and I thought this generally gives me good coverage. And so I tried to basically generally cover more of the elements. Even if it meant dropping a point of strength, I felt like at this stage it's probably still more important to increase my survivability. So that's generally what I went for. So not too soon after making all of these adjustments, I encountered these three. So the fact that we have to take 3 at once is already quite a problem here. Immediately comes in with lava gun, but I have added fire protection now, so I was feeling pretty good about myself. 198, I thought, yeah, I got this. I'm in trance as well. These guys, I'm going to be able to massacre them pretty easily once I actually get the opportunity to attack, because I had a bad start with the back attack. But then they used a mustard bomb. So remember in the previous episode where I was like, wait, does it really work like that, where if you get heat status, you immediately die on trying to perform an action? I'd already committed to the attack here, so I had no choice. I couldn't wait. Okay, so it made sure elemental attacks had no effect. And because I'd already committed to attacking with Zidane, his trance got completely wasted and he got one hit KO'd. It was like literally the absolute worst series of events that could have happened. And as you've already noticed, Steiner, because he has a fire imbued blade, he's doing no damage to these guys as well. It was absolutely the ultimate worst possible scenario. And so if you've already committed to attacking as well, Mustard Bomb, if it hits and you get the heat status, you're dead. So thankfully this was literally immediately after saving and making the adjustment anyway, so it wasn't like a horrible situation. But the fight itself was really an indicator to me that even for random encounters we have to start taking more care now. Like just completely spamming through was looking less and less of an option here. So not too soon after Steiner died, Amaran died too, as Vivi left by himself. I thought there's pretty much no chance, surely Vivi can't solo this. He's still just too weak, unfortunately. Like, he would need some kind of fire absorb to stand a chance. And sure enough, he died as well. But this is just an indication of how things can go wrong. But that said, I equipped the blood sword instead. I just wanted to see if getting that HP back was going to be enough for me, because like we were still struggling. We were taking a lot of damage from every random encounter, and so I figured maybe the blood sword is a better option. And then this forced encounter happened against 2 red dragons. Take a look at this fight. This fight was the most insane random encounter fight I've had in the whole game. Well, I say random encounter, but it's a forced encounter against enemies that are random encounters, I believe. So, they're called red dragons, but they do wind-based damage. Look at the damage here. Amaran took over 1,000 damage, and because this is a reload of the previous save, I have my trance now. So again, I thought, okay, I can still do this. So the fact that we have 2 enemies that can do an AoE attack on everybody and do over 1,000 damage, that was obviously not looking very good. Another wind-based attack that hits everybody. Steiner's already dead. 1,470 damage for Steiner there. Insane. I don't know how the damage numbers work for that. There's a huge variation in the damage here. But thankfully, Zidane is still alive. And of course, you would have noticed at this point that Vivi is absorbing the damage. How is he doing this? At this point, I genuinely didn't realize. I was like, wait a minute, I swear I don't have anything equipped that absorbs wind. Like, all of my accessories should be like other stuff, like fire reduced by 50%, etc. Why is he absorbing? The answer is the octagon rod that he has. I had no idea until after this fight, but the octagon rod absorbs wind damage, and thankfully the majority of the attacks that come from these guys are wind-based and very powerful. So dude is literally able to pretty much solo against the red dragons, which was so funny. Like, seeing Vivi do this, I love the fact that he got his moment to shine. And even in a challenge like this, where he's naturally very ill-equipped to complete it, he was able to solo a very difficult encounter because of his Octagon Rod. So again, the value of elemental protection / absorption. Just crazy stuff. I was so impressed here. Look at him go. What a legend. 44,000 experience points in one battle. So he went up, like, I think 3 levels there, just in one fight. It was absolutely crazy. I was just like, holy shit, what the hell did I just witness? So I went into the menu, obviously, to kind of heal people up here. And then I was just like, I need to go into the equipment here and find out what was going on here. Like, why did this happen? And you see that the Octagon Rod was the hero of that particular story. So as long as he doesn't have the dive move used on him repeatedly, he can basically solo them. So yeah, for all the VV fans out there, which should basically be everybody, that was your VV highlight moment of the playthrough so far. And so now that I've shown you guys the random encounters, like one set of them each here, I will start to move things along more quickly. I was taking a lot of damage in general, like this was the toughest set of random encounters we'd met up until this point. But Steiner's Bloodsword was working fairly well. He was getting anywhere from about 400 to 700 HP back every time. So that really helped. We had the Black Hood, which reduced fire damage by 50%, which helped a lot. And we had Vivi, who could basically solo the Red Dragons as well. So a combination of all of those things allowed me to continue moving on through Mount Gulug. And from there, I am going to head to the final battle that I will show in this particular episode, because we've covered a lot once again. So once we're through, we switch things back to Aiko, and she has a fight against Zorn and Thorn. This is like a preset fight in which you don't actually influence the outcome of it at all. It's just an excuse for her to summon an Eidolon, basically. And you automatically receive a ribbon during the cutscenes. I need to investigate ribbon a little bit more thoroughly. I don't know exactly how it works at this point. Based on what we've seen, you probably don't get the status protection just by equipping it. You probably have to learn the ribbon ability. But I didn't really check it out at this point, so we'll have a look. But what is more important is the final boss battle of this episode against Melty Gemini, like the fused form of Zorn and Thorn. Let's take a look. So obviously they give us a ribbon as a bit of a clue to what you might be dealing with. Melty Gemini has 24,348 HP, and it has status effects, of course. Now, Aiko is also a forced party member here, but thankfully for me, she replaces Vivi, who, yes, he had an amazing run against the dragons, but he's still our lowest damage dealing party member. And so having the 3 heavier hitters in Amar and Steiner and Aiko is definitely useful. Aiko unfortunately got taken out immediately, which I kind of felt bad about. But the one saving grace here is that we are able to do very big damage against Melty Gemini. So it's coming in with these moves like Bio and stuff, but it seemed to me like the amount of damage that the 3 were doing against it was still going to be enough to overpower it. I mean, 2,400. I think it has a weakness to fire that Steiner's Fireblade was exploiting very nicely here. And as a result, just much more able to keep up in this fight and still do the damage that we need. So we're taking definitely more like 800 just from that slap, but thanks to the fact that we were gaining levels a lot more quickly at this stage due to like the challenge level and the amount of experience that the random encounters are giving, it was still pretty balanced at this stage. We were getting to about 2,000 health. So Amarant's in trouble here, but I felt like as long as Steiner stays alive, we should be able to get this done because he's doing huge damage here. And he comes in with a 2,500 to help finish the job. So this one was just more like we just overpowered it completely before it had a chance to do much against us. And so there we have it. I'm going to end this episode here. There was a lot of content. This might be a bit of a longer episode than normal, but there was a lot to cover and a lot of cool things happened. So even though, again, it wasn't like super challenging, there were definitely some interesting things that happened along the way. And I had a lot of fun, for example, seeing Vivi solo the Red Dragons, which was really, really cool. And the really lucky clutch fight against Ark, I also had a lot of fun with. And so we're going to end things here. And in the next episode, I'm going to try to make a push to get to the end of Disc 3. Now, I might not make it because this game is just long. Like, there's just a lot to do. And one thing I don't want to do is, yes, of course, I'm trying to kind of keep a pace and not really drag it out and make it like 15 episodes long for the story. But also I think part of what makes the format cool is that I try to still provide some detail and not just completely gloss over everything or like only cover the bosses or something like that. And so we're going to continue to try and keep that balance. But as a result of this game just having a lot to do and a lot of different options in terms of like what you can equip and what you can pick up, it might still take a little bit longer than the usual. But we will just have to see. Because Disc 4, I think, much like Final Fantasy VIII, is shorter than Disc 3. And so maybe we'll make it to Disc 4 on Episode 7 instead of Episode 6. But hopefully we're still heading towards about 8 episodes, maximum 9 hopefully, for this playthrough. So things are still going well. We haven't encountered anything that's really just put a halt to proceedings and needed like a massive power level or to come up with like a big strategy or anything like that. But there's a lot of boss battles coming up towards the end of Disc 3, and you've seen from this episode, I think one of the main takeaways was that even the random encounters have started to get more dangerous here. So we are definitely heading towards a much more dangerous part of the game, and we will see how things go in the next session. So as always, thank you for the support. Early access is available on Patreon as always, and it continues to help the channel in a huge way for series like this one. I will be back with Episode 6, and we will be making a push to get to the end of Disc 3 soon. So thank you all for watching. Hope you are continuing to enjoy this playthrough. I will see you soon. Take care.